In this, we are going to do the demo for the cluster IP. What exactly the cluster IP? When we need to access the services inside the cluster only. If we need to access the service from outside, then we need to use the NodePort Service or the LoadBalancer Service or the external DNS. But if we have services which are running inside the cluster, inside the Kubernetes cluster, and we need to access those services, then we need to use the cluster IP. So that means I don't want my service to be accessible from outside. Then I'm going to use the cluster IP. Now in this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one demo. Okay, and in this demo, I'm going to create Apache server. Along with that, I'm going to create the MySQL database, and then we are going to connect it together. Let's get started. So the first thing which I need to do is let me open my Visual Studio. So this is my Visual Studio. So I have all the files here which I'm going to use for this demo. Now the first file, I will explain each and everything, so don't worry. The first file which I'm going to take, that is the MySQL deployment. Let me copy this one. Let me go here, menu, MySQL deployment.yaml. This is a deployment file. Let me explain this thing. So it starts with the API version. The kind is deployment. Then we have the metadata. This is the name of the deployment. So we can edit whatever we want. Then we have the specification. Replica is one. How many ports we need to deploy with this? So one. Then we have the selector and the template. So the template is MySQL. This template it is going to use in order to create this thing. Even we can remove this thing. That's okay. Totally fine. But I have keep it here because this is something we are using it in the production. So template is important. Then we have the specification related to the container. And these values are coming from the Docker Hub. And here the name is MySQL. Image is MySQL latest. But if we need to use any of the customized image, what we need to do is we need to go to the Docker Hub. Look for that. So that is the one. Let me go on Docker Hub, MySQL. This is the one. This is the MySQL. And here we have all the supported tags. If you click on that. Here we have the environment values as well. So this is the password. That is the MySQL root password. And then we have the database, and this is the database name. So if you want to edit this information, you can do that. You can customize the value. But you need to do this thing one more time. There is another file, that is the Apache deployment. There we need to update this value. So I'm good with this value. So for me, the password is password and the value is my database. I'm okay with that. Let me save this thing. Now the next thing, I need to create one file for the MySQL service.yaml. Let me copy the content of that. Here we have the API version v1, that is a standard kind of service, metadata, and this is the service name, MySQL-service. Then we have the specification where we have the selector, app is MySQL, and then we have the port value, that is 3306, that is the default port for the MySQL, and the type here is the cluster IP. If I'm going to provide the type as the node port, then we are able to access this application from outside. But currently I need to access this application within the Kubernetes cluster, so I have used the cluster IP. Let me deploy this thing, but before deploy, let me see, do we have any ports or services? kubectl get port, not. kubectl get SVC, that is the short form for the service, or you can also write like this, or you can also write like this. So we don't have any service as well, so ls. So I have two files, deployment file and the service file. Let me deploy this thing. kubectl apply -f MySQL deployment.yaml and then kubectl apply -f MySQL service.yaml. Now let me go and check get pod. Yes, we have one of the pod created. It is not in the ready state. It will come to the ready state. Yes, now it is in the ready state. And let me check for the service as well. SVC. Yes, we have one of the MySQL service here. And the port number is 3306. Great. Now let me create for Apache deployment, Apache.yaml. And let me copy the content. So here is the content of this. Let me explain this thing. Again, we have the API version. Then we have the kind deployment. Metadata, this is the actual name. So the name is HTTP deployment. So whatever the name you want to give for your pod, you can give it here. Then we have the specification. So here the replica are 3. Replica I'm going to cover in another video in detail. But replica here in simple term, we are creating 3 pod for this service. If I'm going to change the value to 1, that means I'm creating 1 pod for this service, for this deployment. Then we have the selector where we have the mesh label as HTTPD. Then we have the template. Again, if we don't want to use, we can simply remove this selector and the template option. But this is something which we are using it in the production, so better to have it here. Specification, again this value is coming from where? From the Docker Hub, where we have the name HTTP latest, port number 80, and this is something important, environment value. So here I need to connect my 3 pods to this database. So I'm giving the value here inside the container, inside the specification container. Here I'm providing this value. So name is MySQL host, value is MySQL service, then the username, then the password, then the database name. Now I need to create the service nano Apache-service.yaml. Again, let me explain this thing. API version v1, kind is service, metadata HTTP, this is the name of the service. Then we have the selector, then we have the port, and here we have the type cluster IP. Let me deploy this thing, kubectl apply -f, then Apache deployment. Oh, the spelling is not correct. Okay, that's okay. kubectl apply -f, Apache service.yaml. Now let me see kubectl get pod. Yes, we have 3 pod created and all are in running state. And let me check for the service, kubectl get SVC or service HTTP. Yes, we have this thing running on port number 80. Now the next thing which I need to do is I need to verify whether from this container I'm able to reach MySQL service or not. So how I can do that? For this, what I'm going to do is kubectl get pod. Now these 3 pod, I can pick up any of the pod in order to check. First, I'm going to log in inside the pod. So the command is kubectl exec -it, then the name. Let me copy the name from here. Then what we need to give is --, then bin dash. Okay, we logged in inside this container. Okay, now the next thing which I need to do is I need to check the environment value for what? I need to check the environment value for MySQL. So here is the value. So here we have the username, password, host, every information is here. Or you can refer your YAML file in order to get all those information. This is a shortcut way. Okay. Now, let's try to connect this thing. So the command is MySQL -h. So h means the host name here and this is the host name. Then we need to give the username, that is -u, and the username for me is root. -p is for the password. Let me hit enter. Oh, now we are getting MySQL command not found. Okay, so MySQL is not installed. So first we need to install the MySQL inside this container. So how to install the MySQL? So the first thing which I need to do is to install the service. So for that, app get install, and we can install MySQL client. Okay, unable to locate the package MySQL client. Okay, app get update. Let me go with this first. Let me try. Okay, I'm still not able to find this package. Let me try with other thing. So I think the correct name is default something. Yes, it is working. It is installing the MySQL client. Okay, MySQL client is installed. So again, I need to run that command environment variable grep MySQL, and then MySQL minus h. H means the host name. Host name for me is MySQL service. Then I have the username, that is the root. Then P, that is for the password. And for me, the password is password, PASSWORD. I'm able to connect. So that means there is a connectivity with the help of the cluster IP. And let me do the show databases. If you remember, we have created one database as well, that is with the name My Database. And yes, we are able to see that database as well. So this is how we can create a connectivity, internal connectivity between the cluster with the help of the cluster IP service. Let me exit. And you can also delete the deployment and everything, whatever you have created. So kubectl get deployment. So here if you see, you have one of the deployment. So kubectl delete deployment httpd deleted. The same thing you need to do for the MySQL as well. Done. Kubectl get pod. See, you have no code running. And the last thing which you need to do is get service. Let's delete the service as well. Kubectl delete svc, or you can give the complete name service, httpd service. Done. And then we have the MySQL service. And kubectl get service. Yes, we have no service running. Thank you.